Boom!
And Bordeaux.
This is Reboot Biblical Perspective, coming to you live from the Chilean Republic of Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean, West Indies. The one and most unique podcast, one and unique radio talk show, streaming live on Kingdom Purpose TV and radio, where we approach the New Testament via the lens of the ancient Hebrew perspective of the scriptures, as well as in this talk show, we highlight how Jesus fulfilled the scriptures by reliving the narrative of the biblical characters, step by step, and all verified by our pragmatic and experimental research carried out under the Zane K. Kitura International Institute of Pneumatology. Over the last 2 weeks in particular, we've been having some technical difficulties, and we made some progress to that, and here we are back again. And today, you are listening to Zane El Fuego, the Christ pneumatologist, and
Lady Keturah, the high priestess of Yahweh Elohim. It's awesome to be here, Zane. Today is actually going to be another fun episode, an exciting episode. We did miss you guys for a few weeks, and so we are really thrilled to be back. We are going to be sharing on a topic that everyone, and I mean everyone, walking in Christ should come to an understanding of or will be able to relate to, and it's living from your heart living, Zane. This is something that I found out, me in particular, with my journey. I realized that this is something that I was not doing most of my life because I was actually living by rules and systems that forbid the living from the heart experience that we all should have in Christ. How about you, Zane? Is this something that you knew about prior to what you understand now?
prior to the research at the International Institute of Pneumatology, I can't say that I knew what it meant to live from your heart totally. Coming out from a very religious denominational background, I was pretty much, let's say, caught up with the rule keeping system.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing is about the rule keeping system is that when we learn to live from our rule keeping system, it literally we literally use that rule keeping system to validate ourselves as good people.
Yeah.
To validate ourselves as, this is what I'm doing to validate myself as a child of God. What I'm doing to validate myself as a son of God. Right? And when we do that, we face a lot of situations, and a lot of times we are not facing situations where the whole idea of living from your heart becomes somewhat of a distant, let's say, a distant dynamic, because usually when you keep any rule keeping system, there are a lot of things that you encounter that in your heart you're not feeling right about, and sometimes you might encounter persons that you're not feeling too right about because they may have some intentions that the spirit in you is revealing through your heart. You're feeling it deep down inside, but the rule keeping system in particular becomes to you a louder voice than what is in your heart.
Yes.
And yeah,
I could definitely relate as you're talking there, as in your interactions with people through the rule keeping system. I know, and in my heart I felt that sometimes this isn't right. But when you have the rules, for example, if you use love as a rule of validation for your interaction with people, you then now take off the responsibilities that are involved in that connection. And people may be doing your things and you're feeling uncomfortable, but you're not living from the heart because you're saying, well, to love my brother, to love my sister, I should do this or I shouldn't do that. And that experience for me changed when I began to understand what it really is to live by what you truly think and feel.
Right.
And it's interesting that we're on this topic, Zane. In the Bible, a lot of interpretations that comes with the word heart. What is the context of heart in the Bible, like living from the heart?
So the context of learning from your heart in the Bible is both in the Old and New Testament. The words that are actually used to translate heart in the Old Testament is the Hebrew word lev, which is Lev,
Okay.
and in the New Testament is the Greek word cardia. Now, even though there are slight differences to what that is, um, even though there are slight differences to what that is, what we well, I shouldn't say slight differences because it's foundationally it's the same thing, right? There's the definitions are some technical differences, but in both cases, heart refers to your, your thoughts and feelings, right? And when I say thoughts and feelings, your true thoughts and feelings. So usually, when you're actually living from your heart, you're living from what you truly think and feel, and where that is actually tied into the Bible, it's tied into the whole idea of um it's tied into the whole idea of living from what we in the previous segments that we've done, episodes or segments of this talk show, is identifying what it means to live from the breath, and actually the difference between living from the breath and living from the dust. And so in the context of the God narrative, if you had to take, because everything in the Bible goes back to the God narrative. If everybody hasn't actually gotten that point by now, something had to be wrong, right?
Yeah.
So everything goes back to the God narrative, and the God narrative, that is actually you living from the breath. And what that means is, what that simply means in a, let's say, in a psychological or modern technical to mechanical way, is simply living from the nature of what God has put into you, the nature of what was breathed into you, which is actually that self-existent and self-existent authority is breathed into you, where you live from what you truly think and feel towards the creation, and not live from the creation towards yourself, which is you're not using anything that is dust to pretty much to pretty much dictate to you how to live, what to do, people's opinions, whether it's things, money, educational status, social status, your career, anything. You're not using anything to actually tell you what to do, or using anything else as a priority, but what God has put into you, that authority, that the presence of the breath, the Spirit of God, the nature of God in you, as the priority to live from.
I see. So in doing that, living from the so I just need to ask a question here then. Is it that you're saying living from your heart is living from your breath?
It's one and the same. It's one and the same. The scriptures actually parallel them as one and the same.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like
because
in Proverbs.
for example, Job in the Bible parallels thought with breath, and then there are other scriptures that actually parallel spirit with heart, spirit, heart, mind. All of these things are actually different facets of the breath, and have been made separate only in the perspective of the dust, which is what the most westernized societies, how westernized societies see things. But in the context of the scriptures, all those things are different functions of the same breath, the same spirit.
I
So
see.
we on the topic of the bread, the reason why we actually talking about this in particular is because we have a special guest coming in here today that I actually got in contact with this person, and she's actually a heart coach. All right, this is actually a heart coach. Her name is actually her name is Kourtney King, and she's actually joining us today. She's actually joining us today from NYC
Awesome.
in the US. And Kourtney in particular has been I've known Kourtney for some time, at least about 8 months now. And Kourtney is actually, she's been mentored by us at the International Institute of Pneumatology, and has actually begun to change lives by the things that she has encountered in her mentorship at the International Institute of Pneumatology. I've actually personally mentored her, and she's now actually taking that knowledge of living from the heart and begun to literally change people's lives.
That
Kourtney,
sounds great.
Kourtney, are you there?
I'm here. Hi, Zane. Hi, Katura.
How are you?
Hey,
I'm well. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, so just so everybody have an idea of as to who Kourtney King is. She's actually known as Coach Kourtney King, heart coach.
Yes.
Kourtney is an eminent professional heart coach and actually an internationally certified mental resilience coach that is, as I mentioned just now, it's endorsed by the International Institute of Pneumatology. And she specializes in showing how living from the heart has the power to change lives. It is actually, in my conversation with her, her defining experience with coming to the realization that for all her life, she was unknowingly living through the pursuit of validation in her personal development, in her career, relationships, parenting, and more. And despite her best efforts, she could not pull herself out of that mental anguish and depression, the anxiety, the low self-esteem, lack, feelings of inadequacy, identity codependency, things that most people in particular experience but have not been able to put their fingers on. And she actually lived from that, looking for somebody or from somewhere or something to rescue her from that. Right. And so today in particular, she's here with us on the Reboot Medical Perspective talk show live on Kingdom Purpose TV. And so Kourtney, we are ecstatic to have you here.
I'm ecstatic
indeed.
to be here. I really am. This is so exciting.
Yeah, we're excited. We're excited to have you here. We're excited to actually hear a little bit about your story and also what are the things in particular that have actually impacted you in your mentorship at the International Institute of Pneumatology that is actually causing you to impact lives in the way that you're impacting it today. So the first question that we want to actually ask you, Kourtney, is along the lines of, well, clearly, what is your story? Your story has always fascinated me, and actually, I would like you to take the opportunity to give our listeners the opportunity to hear where you came from and give us this insight as to where you came from, that journey from where you mentioned you came from to where you are now.
Sure. And first, I want to say it's such an honor, but my lifetime of validation goes back so far that I remember being in like the fourth or fifth grade and writing this story. And one of the lines in the story is, "My life is nothing but a shadow among the fog." And I literally repeated
Wow.
that line throughout my lifetime. This from this
Wow.
story that I wrote. And I always had this image of being in like a hole in the ground, like a pit. And I could look up at the sky and see that there was freedom on the other side. And I always questioned myself, like, how will I ever get there? And it was when I began being mentored through the, institute and you, that I was able to live for freedom. And so it's just so awesome now that other people are being freed. But in terms of like my story, I always felt I was ugly. Most of my life, I didn't like myself. I didn't like the way I looked. I didn't like the way I sounded. I felt unworthy, thought I was
Wow.
unintelligent, and I was always looking for someone to accept me. I was always the victim. And at the same time, I just really have more of like a bubbly, happy, silly, cheery, creative type of personality, but I was still dealing with this battle in my spirit.
Hmm.
And I was always someone who was constantly dimming my light because I was worried about other people not accepting the fullness of who I was.
Right.
And not accepting, not liking me, or being rejected. And I actually grew up in Oklahoma, with two Republican Christian parents in a Pentecostal household. And when I was really younger, it was really like a happy time the first few years of my life. You know, my mom made a big deal about birthdays and Christmas, and I was always this little girl who was dancing and singing and acting and making stories and little things, and had this dream about being in New York City and an actress and opening a place for children. So that was my dream. And I went through quite a bit, like I'm sure a lot of our listeners did. But, you know,
Right.
growing up in a Pentecostal household, there was a lot of rules to follow. It did shape my view of who God was.
Right. Right.
I
I
had parents.
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah. And I had parents who served in ministry, so that was
Okay.
my life. You know, in fact, most of my family attended my church. I was very shy at church because,
Right.
again, I was always dimming my light. Um, I grew up in like a predominantly white area, and so I even dealt with because you know, I looked different. My nose was big, my forehead was big, my lips were big, and my skin is dark. So, because of that, I even began to have this narrative in my head that I wanted my name to be Stacy. And
Okay.
I
Okay.
I did, and I wanted to have blonde hair and blue eyes. So I literally, at a very young age, started to having this self-hate for myself and was
Wow.
always comparing myself to someone else. And because I didn't look like them or talk like them, I would shrink who I was. And I grew up actually as the eldest of four. I have two brothers and one sister. My sister is the youngest, and she's not. There's a 9 year difference between us. And I was always looking at my cousins, and I always wanted to be like them. You know, they did hopscotch and were cheerleaders and all these different things. And so everybody I looked at, I looked and compared and said they're better than me.
Right. Right.
And so that automatically steals your joy. So no wonder I wrote
Yeah.
stories saying my life is nothing but a shadow among the fog.
That's a gloomy slogan.
It is
Yeah.
a horrible
And it's
slogan.
deep.
It is,
Is deep,
and
right.
as a child to come up with something. Now, I even now I'm a playwright, so to even at this age, I had these stories, and I was writing stories based on what was in my heart and how I felt about myself, like the reflection of myself. And this was this narrative, and it was interesting. And so one of the things that even in this artistic of me, my mom was a great influence for me, and like how she dressed and how she decorated the house and just the love of languages and different type of music. And so all of my life wasn't foggy, but even those good times were still influenced by this narrative that I had in my head, that I was ugly and that I was not intelligent and that, you know, no one would ever really love me.
Right.
And even my understanding, you know, of what Jesus and what how he felt about me was really skewed. And
Mm.
with my parents, like my dad was a really funny, but he had more of a very when I was younger, he was kind of strict at times. You know, he was a military man. So I was just like the type of person who never really got into trouble. I really just did what I was supposed to do. But
Right.
on occasion, he did, and I have no issue with my father. Okay, so I'm not gonna. This is not dad bashing, but he used to call me blonde, and essentially that meant that I lacked common
Ah,
sense. So
right.
that
Right.
stuck with me. So that's where that narrative of you are stupid came from. So through my life, I really had this drive where I had to make straight A's. And I would get stressed out if I didn't make straight A's, especially when I got in college. I really started to see that. And then eventually my parents got divorced and separated. So now I was dealing with floating between two parents, which made me deal with like instability and lack of stability. And it was really kind of scary.
Mm.
And again, all these things, which because I'm living from my heart, a lot of this stuff, there's been that healing that has come. So this is just a story to me now, whereas before it was this experience that I dwelled in. But another situation that happened is I was actually molested when I was a child. And when I shared that with my family, it was nothing really done about it. So
Right.
I also took on this, you're not worthy to fully be loved. And that led me to trying to find someone to love me somewhere. Um, and a lot of that drove me into situations that I should have definitely not been in.
So you can safely say that you were building external reference point upon external reference point.
I built an entire kingdom of external reference points. And
Uh,
Wow.
I built an entire kingdom of an external reference points, and it is really exhausting to rule such a kingdom.
I can
it
only
is
imagine.
it is exhausting. So yeah,
Uh, so
that, and then go ahead.
no, so I'm just saying that based on what I'm hearing is that you had different phases of life, and in those different phases of life, each phase you sought an external reference point, an external point of comparison to be able to show yourself approved. And even on the last reference point you're saying there, with regards to the experience, that negative experience that you had, even that became um a reference point that caused you to seek approval in others in looking for love. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then I can actually pinpoint different parts of my life where it's like, oh, that's where that reference point came from. And so, like, even just seeing my mom stress trying to take care of us,
Mm-hmm.
and then being on welfare. So then I had to deal with lack and the fear of not ever feeling like I have enough. And so that even drove later when I got into my marriage, and it drove into how I took care of my own child. And so this, again, this exhausting kingdom of anguish that I had built really had driven me through all of my life, because whatever your mental framework is, that's going to play the role in how you understand yourself, your potential, your limitations. And this is what I was experiencing in my life.
Wow, that's amazing, Courtney. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's just actually just let's take a brief pause here
Okay.
for intermission or interlude. And when we come back, we'd love to hear what in particular caused the major changes for you to transition from that kingdom of external reference points, as they put it, to now the kingdom of spirit. Yeah.
Most definitely, sure.
All right. So we'll be right back.
This is Reboot Your Biblical Perspective talk show on Kingdom Purpose TV and radio, where we approach the New Testament via the lens of the ancient Hebrew perspective of the scriptures, verified by our pragmatic and experimental research on the Zane K. Keturah International Institute of Pneumatology. Be sure to follow this talk show as well as many other dynamic talk shows on Kingdom Purpose TV and radio at www.kingdompurposetv.com/kingdom-purpose-radio. You can also find content by Zane and Keturah on YouTube, ZKI International Institute of Pneumatology. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. Or follow us and subscribe at www.internationalinstituteofpneumatology.com. You can also find their books on Amazon.com. Search for author R.Z. Pierre and check out The Alchemy of the Sons of God and You Are Elohim, among others.
And we are back with Coach Kourtney King, awesome heart coach that has actually been impacting the lives of many through the understanding of living from the heart, what we call at the International Institute of Pneumatology, living from your self-existence. You've given God's name. And here we have Coach Kourtney actually taking that and reorienting the lives of many. So Kourtney, before we went for the break, you actually stated, well, you actually give us a little insight into your story and how, in your words, how you build this kingdom of external reference points that robbed you of joy, robbed you of peace, and in some cases, and I'm not sure if it'll be accurate to say this, but for many people, that lifestyle begins to rob you of sanity. Yeah.
That
Mm-hmm.
yes, most definitely.
Yeah. So what in particular would you say, even in your transition and even at your mentorship at the institute, what do you think caused the major changes? What most impacted you to actually that shook you out of that and caused you to change citizenship, as in so to
Well,
speak.
there was specific events that happened. One was the passing of my mother, and I really kind of blame myself because I couldn't heal her, if you will. And then one was the failure of a relationship, and I remember waking up one day, and I had already been in counseling. I remember waking up one day and I said, I wish Zane would mentor me and coach me. and
I
and
remember you
so
told me that,
then
Jay.
and so I got on Facebook and you literally posted like, hey, I'm wanting to mentor someone. And I was like, it should be me. And so we kind of went from there. And I have to say, over the course of the time that, we spent really breaking down this kingdom of external validation, there was a few things that, we did that um, help break that down. And one would probably have to be the building of trust, because you really have to reframe your mindset in terms of like your trust on how you see God now.
Right.
Because you had viewed him previously with my upbringing and my understanding that he was something, yeah, Holy Spirit dwelled in me, but that understanding that there is no separation and that you have the exact existence that he has. You
Right.
have authority, he has authority. You are self-sufficient just like he is self-sufficient. So I think one of those things, and then also understanding that in the time of transition, you do have to be patient with yourself, and that you cannot, Rome wasn't built in a day, and tearing this kingdom down and creating this new Eden or heaven is not going to happen in a day also. So I
Right.
think
Right.
just really being patient with yourself and allowing yourself to have those moments or those days, and then really just going back and say, okay, let me step back into the mentality that I need to be in.
So if you permit me to digress here a little bit,
Yeah.
you mentioned that there were deaths and so on in your circle that
Mm-hmm.
actually caused you. What kind of impact that actually had on you as an individual with regards to where you were standing?
I think so. When these two situations, with the relationship not working and my mother passing away, they happened within a year of one another. And I think because of, the story I just told you, and I only got a few years of my story out, but I was a high functioning depressed person. And so
Hmm.
most people, because I'm like bubbly and cheery, don't know that I'm depressed. But in this particular situation, when that happened, I probably fell into the deepest funk of my life because, I prayed over my mom, and I expected her to get up and she did not respond. And so I was angry, I was upset, and it really took me to a very dark place. I still was functioning.
Right.
Um and I had gone through counseling, which gave me the opportunity to really just talk about it and talk about it, but it gave me no solutions that weren't still codependent. And I needed something that would allow me to stand up on my own because I had always been the victim. So now I had to learn to stand up.
Right, right, right.
Hmm.
Does I mean I can also relate to what you experienced there, because I mean for the listeners here, and a lot of them are familiar with my story also, and having gotten to that point where I don't know if it's actually same for you, but I got to the point where I felt hopeless because the God that I looked to, that I had been taught, it had been inculcated to me for years, that this God will never fail you. And at the point where you think he should actually demonstrate his flawless record, it didn't come true for me. Would you say that you had something a similar experience?
Definitely a hopelessness. I think I always felt like something was missing. Like, okay, I knew Jesus was truth, right? I knew that he was the way, the truth, and the light, but I couldn't pinpoint why I still felt this void.
Right.
Why, after all of these, and I was the person, I was the faster. I would fast for days. I would pray for hours. Like, I was doing what I needed to do to be the good girl, the good Christian for the breakthrough, but there was still something missing. I was still trying to figure out why I was joyless, why um, the fruit of the spirit wasn't something that I was constantly experiencing when it was supposed to be something that was with me always.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
just that missing, that void, I definitely wanted to figure out how to get out of that pit I had always been in for sure.
Yeah,
Hmm.
definitions. Way we actually saying, he's the way, the truth, and the life, and we don't even know what is that exactly.
Yeah, I'm listening to you both, and I'm thinking to myself also that having had my own experience, which pretty much is the exhaustion of what you knew, reaching to the place of exhausting everything that you think you needed to do to get where you want to be. And I can definitely relate to an extent, and it's really inspiring hearing your story. I'm sure it's already encouraging and motivating our listeners to reach to the point of like what you reach to, getting out of it, to start
Mm,
tapping into what really it is, all the
yeah,
praying and the fasting and all the things that we think that we need to do to define functioning
and the
functional.
and the conditions that we put on what God has said already.
Yes.
I tried to make the best grade. I ran every ministry. I did every fast one could. I did it all. I
Oh
did it
my.
all, and so, yeah, and I spent many years and another area of validation for me was I ran so much of the ministry that I was in, but it was because I was trying to validate myself because it
Hmm.
gave me a sense of worth. But it
Yeah,
is exhausting to constantly perform for all those years. And eventually there's a breakdown that happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
definitely. So this then, Courtney, brings us to another question here. Can you identify three things that anyone can do now to experience the power of heart life that you are living, walking, experiencing, and coaching others into?
I most definitely can. In fact, if listeners want, they can go to my website right now, coachkourtney.com, and it's Courtney with a K, and they can download 3 strategies to truly live life. And in that ebook, I talk about 3 strategies that you can do. And I think first, listeners need to understand that your mental framework plays the role in how you interface with everything. I'm talking about neighbors, how you manage your home, how you manage your finances, how you manage your health. All of it is connected. Everything is connected. And so, because that is the thing that is inspiring you.
Hmm.
So when that thing is no longer present, when it's not available or it's not functioning, when the grades aren't great or the child is acting up or the husband's not right or all these things aren't functioning, you start to feel stressed and anxiety and
Mm-hmm.
feelings of inadequacy. This is that fog I was talking about. This is that
Right, right.
kingdom. And this could
Yes.
be money, status, sex, children. So I mean the list is endless. But I think the first thing that a person needs to do is really just begin to observe. So I would take a day or two and say, I want you to observe, I want you to identify areas where you are entertaining external reference points, areas where you are stressed about something, or areas where you see that you're anxious, or areas where you see that there's depression or sadness. First, identify that, because once you're able to identify it, you can begin to make some adjustments. And so each of these scenarios, you are referencing something other than your divine dignity, your own heart, your own breath. You're not living from yourself. You're actually looking outside of yourself, which is frustrating, by the way.
Yeah.
So that would be the first thing, is you want to definitely observe to see where you and I want to also say, don't try to do everything at once. So if you notice it has to do with your child, don't try to handle your child, your job, your health on the first day. That's
Hmm.
overwhelming. Pick
Yes.
one thing. Pick one thing, two max, to say, okay, this is an area where I see I have external reference point. My
Right.
second thing would be, and that this second point goes back to being the victim, right? And so now you need to become the ruler. Now you need to become the governor. Now you need to become the one who's in charge of your life, right? Because whatever is ruling over you is technically the thing that's inspiring you. That's the thing that's giving you life. That's the thing that's holding the power. That's the thing that is, and it could be advice, an individual, someone else's opinion. It could be a situation, but that thing is living your life for you. And that is such a hard pill to swallow. But
Right.
as an adult, you are fully responsible. You should be fully responsible for your own life and sitting on the throne of your own life. So once you've now identified this, you now have to take ownership. You got to take your power back. Okay.
Right,
You got to
right.
take your authority back. And so that would be the next thing, is just to say, now I'm going to be the leader of my life and not this thing. So you're going to reject that thing. That would be the second thing. And then the third thing is, because now that you're governing, it's not something that you just do by chance, right? Um, you're going to need to make some sort of plan, right? Because even God himself makes plans, right? So I
Yeah.
call this godding. So you're going to start godding. and, and and
Yeah.
and you're going to start making plans to move you into the direction based on what you've said about this thing that you came up with in your heart.
Right.
Because like God, like Yahweh, you are sovereign over your Eden, you are sovereign over your universe, you are sovereign over your world. So you are in charge. So it's important to note also that the plan may not go exactly like you've planned it out, but what you're doing is you're acting as the governor. You're
Hmm.
acting out. You're acting as the one who's navigating things. So you want to ensure that you've got something concrete. I do suggest you write this plan down, but also don't allow it to be something that stresses you if you see that it's happening on Tuesday instead of Wednesday, if you will.
Courtney, we just mentioned there is all fire. All fire.
Woo!
It is. So
And
basically,
if someone applies this in a week, they can
mhm.
start to see these changes in that week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So you help people transition through each phase, right? Through each, as a coach who's helping them live from their heart. Um,
Right.
you're pretty much guiding them every step of the way to live from authoritative mode as well, or guarding mode, as you put it.
That is right. So my whole thing is, everything you need for your life is already in you. And what
Hmm.
we're going to do is we're going to break down that kingdom of validation, that kingdom of external references, and we're going to build up your own garden. And what you're going to find in that garden, it will no longer be stress, but you're going to be living love and joy and peace, and it's going to be the fruit of the spirit is what you will be living, and that's what I live now, and I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it so much. I'm no longer living in the shadow among the fog. Now I just
That's
live
what
in
it,
this. I just live in the sun now. That's all I live in.
that is what we're saying. The sun and the sky,
That's it.
There's so many people in particular that um uh that actually come up in different different systems and different cultures, different environments that have groomed them to live as you put it, to live in the shadow, where everything around them is really telling them what is true and what is not, telling them what to do and what not to do, when to do it and when not to do it. And it's awesome to see that you actually you in this case you're taking exactly what the scripture is about, what returning persons practically and methodically to being seated in the heavenly places with Christ, where you are seated in the heavenly places and shining like the sun. So you are pretty much pulling people out of that shadow, that darkness, and actually bringing them into the awareness of the light and showing them how to walk that out in different areas of life. Yeah.
That is exactly true. I teach them you have heaven now. You have heaven on earth right now. When you're living with the anxiety and the depression and the frustration and the fear and the bitterness and the feelings of insufficiency, you are living out a hell on earth, and you don't have to. And so, what we do as we're walking through, these challenges that you're dealing with, we literally are breaking that down and we're replacing those things with light in your life.
That's what we're talking about. From darkness to light. From the kingdom of darkness to the kingdom of his beloved son. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, so for each and every one of you listening to this segment today, you can find Kourtney right now, and I encourage you to go directly to she can be found on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Reddit. You can also find her on TikTok. All right, you're looking for Coach Kourtney King. Coach Kourtney, that's Kourtney with a Kourtney. Coach Kourtney K, as all one word, on any one of those platforms. Those platforms again are Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Reddit, and TikTok. All right, connect with her right now. She actually posts very insightful and enlightening articles on a regular basis that stimulates thought, provokes thought, and provokes your awareness and your consciousness as to where you are and where you're living from. Because many of us have actually come up, and even those who have actually had experience in denominational circles, they've been taught to live from the scripture, but you're not living the scripture from your heart. You're living from the scripture from an external point of comparison. And as you heard from here, from Kourtney, she's actually now living exactly what Christ has paid for, where she's now living from. It's awesome to hear that, and it's awesome to know, Kourtney, that you actually moving people that actually want to live that life to transition from that dark, gloomy area to the brightness of Christ in them. Yeah, so you can also find Kourtney. Go to Kourtney's website. That's Kourtney King. It's Kourtney. What's your website again?
It's coachkourtney.com, and
Coach
that's
Kourtney.
Kourtney with a K. Yeah.
All right, so that's coachkourtney.com, and get your free ebook. She's actually offering a free ebook on the things that she mentioned here today, where you can actually sit down and digest that information. Free ebook, guys. Go to coachkourtney.com. So, Kourtney, we actually pretty much coming up on the time here now. Is there one thing in particular? There's one thing in particular that you think that everybody needs to just stop and consider that you would like to leave with them?
Yeah, I would say to them, um, everything is already in you. And if you take the time to live from your heart, you will see heaven on earth. You will experience a new life that you're supposed to be living right now.
That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. Living from the garden of Eden.
Photo.
Yeah. So you can, as you mentioned, guys, you can actually contact Kourtney on her on social media platforms, or go to coachcourtney.com now. Go to the site, get that free book. And whether you're an individual and this resonates with you here today, or you're part of a little group, you have a small circle, or even um from a particular fellowship, and there's a group of you, and you all would like to actually experience that journey, where what Kourtney is literally doing here is taking the scriptures practically and methodically and applying it to bring you from where you are to where you want to be, and living that and realizing the life that Christ has purchased for you. All this from how many thousands of years ago? Yeah. So, Kelly, is there anything you want to add to what we're saying before we wrap this segment?
Actually, I just wanted to say it was an awesome hearing on. Sure. I just want to say it was awesome hearing Coach Courtney share her story, where she came from, how her journey has evolved pretty much. I'm While she was sharing, it made me also reflect on my journey, and the experience that we share of stepping out of that dark kingdom, as she identified as a kingdom, which I found was so interesting. It's so true. That kingdom and stepping into the light. And I'm really, really excited to be a part of this episode here today with you, Coach Courtney. Awesome. It's a pleasure. And I look forward to all the lives that are going to change and experience that transformation that you experienced as well. It's amazing.
I thank you all so much for having me on here. It's been great. Appreciate it.
It's a privilege. It's a privilege. Yeah. So, for those of you who would actually like to access this interview and listen to this interview again, we encourage you to do so. You can actually find this interview on our YouTube channel. We'll also you'll also be able to find it on Kingdom Purpose Radio on our YouTube channel. That's ZKI or ZKI International Institute of Pneumatology. Just look for special guest Coach Kourtney King on YouTube. Just search it, special guest Coach Kourtney King, and you will find this interview, this fantastic interview. And if you're actually on Facebook, you can join our community, Life Mindset Mentors. Be sure to connect with Kourtney on her social media, because to this interview here is actually the first of a series that we're going to be doing. And in the upcoming series, we're going to be doing some video interviews, so you can see who Coach Kourtney is, apart from the image that you saw on the digital flyer. You can actually see her, and you'll have the opportunity to come ask her questions, to throw out whatever you may be experiencing, and get her insight on how to take that and turn it around and see the manifestation of either supernatural power or even a dramatic change in your life. One of the things that we also say, we always say at the Institute, is that definitions are the precursor to change. Change is a mere product of redefinition. Whatever the experience that you're having now is actually as a result of the definition that you have been using. Whether the definition of yourself, the definition of God, the definition of the Bible. And so if you want to see change, want to see the fruit of the Spirit, then we strongly encourage you to consider what Coach Kourtney has actually put out here, and also to consider that if you want change, redefinition is priority. Yeah, so join us on Life Mindset Mentors. Find us on Facebook, Zane K. Couture International Institute of Pneumatology. That's the Facebook page. Or come to our Facebook community, Life Mindset Mentors, and be a part of the community of Elohim. And look forward to actually hearing a little more from Coach Kourtney, professional heart coach and internationally accredited mental resilience coach. Yeah, this is Rebooting Local Perspective. Today we're speaking about rebooting your heart. This is Rebooting Local Perspective talk show live on Kingdom Purpose TV and radio, and we want to actually give a huge shout out to Kingdom Purpose TV and radio for their awesome platform. Just recently, Kingdom Purpose TV actually featured me on my story on their platform. So go to Kingdom Purpose TV, the website as well as their Facebook page, and take a look at that. Shout out to everyone who's joining us on Kingdom Purpose TV and radio, and for everyone who joined us on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitch. Blessings and much love. If you'd like to get more information, go to Coach Kourtney K on social media. Just look for that or coachkourtney.com. We see you all next Wednesday. Blessings and much love. And thank you again for your awesome presence. Boom.